Hi guys, I got an interesting topic for this week. You all know that I like to go on and on about the Triforce and timelines, and I am of course very interested to see if the Triforce returns in the Breath of the Wild sequel. However, the fundamental nature of the relic and how it interacts with its holders is one that remains unclear. Today I am going to explore my thoughts on the matter with a friend of mine, Andy from Zeldom, who happens to be another Zelda theorist who you've probably heard of.
Of course they've heard of me. I'm like the most famous Zelda theorist on YouTube. Like Drax, I'm also known to be extraordinarily humble.
Well, with introductions out of the way, let's get started. I'm Cornelius Belmont.
And I'm Andy from Zeldom.
And let's talk about
Triforce pairing.
Thanks for joining me. If you want to see similar content like this, please like and subscribe to the channel. Special thank you to these people for letting me use their assets. Spoilers ahead for the following games. Let's get into it. So clearly the Triforce binds the people based on the virtues they most align with. In some games, the Triforce holders are physically in possession of the relic, while in others, we see them using the relic's power remotely. It is this remote access that we want to focus on today, and specifically the instances in games where we see this happening while the relic is still in the Sacred Realm.
Once Ganon is defeated in Ocarina of Time, Princess Zelda returns Link to his original time, causing the creation of the child and adult timelines. Once Link returns to the child timeline, he goes to the castle courtyard to inform Zelda of Ganondorf's plans so it may be avoided. In this cutscene following the credits of Ocarina of Time, we can visibly see the mark of the Triforce of Courage on the back of Link's hand. Page 13 of the Zelda Encyclopedia confirms that, at the conclusion of Ocarina of Time, Link bears the Triforce of Courage, Zelda the Triforce of Wisdom, and Ganondorf the Triforce of Power. Although it's confirmed each of our three main characters possess their corresponding pieces of the Triforce at this point, it's interesting we never actually see them wielding their physical portion of the Triforce, only channeling its power through the marks on their hands. Later, in the case of Twilight Princess, it seems even more unlikely that they would have the physical pieces of the Triforce, because even Ganondorf himself at the time was not aware he had the power until his attempted execution took place.
You bring up some good points. Ganondorf's execution is clearly a case of power being accessed remotely, specifically because the relic is in the Sacred Realm in a unified state at that time. The situation that we see at the end of Ocarina of Time is a bit more interesting, because during that confrontation, Link, Zelda, and probably Ganondorf are likely accessing the Triforce remotely. The game does state earlier that when Ganondorf entered the Sacred Realm, he did indeed obtain the Triforce. It also states that when this happened, the Triforce of Courage and Wisdom went to Link and Zelda. We believe that this doesn't mean the Triforce pieces physically separated, but instead those two pieces paired themselves with the two heroes, granting them remote access to its power. Ultimately, this means that the battle with Ganondorf at the end of Ocarina of Time would be about defeating Link and Zelda in order to gain their access to the Triforce, so that he could use its full power.
So if the pieces aren't physically being held by Link, Zelda, and Ganondorf at this time, then where could they be? From what I can tell, the most common perception us Zelda fans have had is that the Triforce is able to convert itself between physical matter and energy, and thus capable of embedding itself into its wielder. This is consistent with the lore, as the Force as a whole in the Zelda series is known to be convertible in this way. However, Cornelius has developed another explanation for the Triforce's possible location.
I think the pieces would still be in the Sacred Realm. After he touched it, the place would have been corrupted and turned into a reflection of Ganondorf's heart, save for the Chamber of Sages and maybe the Temple of Light. He also wouldn't need the whole thing physically on his body, as he would be aware that he can access its power remotely. As for if the pieces could reside within the characters themselves, I think it is more likely that it resides within the Sacred Realm, and comes to the holder when called or needed.
If this truly is the case, then we need to explain why we can see the pieces of the Triforce physically in Hyrule rather than the Sacred Realm during games such as Zelda 1, Zelda 2 The Adventure of Link, and Wind Waker. In these games, the Triforce is physically in Hyrule, not the Sacred Realm. Thus the battles in these games are for physical possession of the Triforce, not just the ability to channel its power. Skyward Sword has a similar circumstance, however in this game Link must assemble the physical pieces of the Triforce from the Silent Realm and bring them to Skyloft to use his wish. It's worth mentioning that the mark of the full Triforce does appear on Link's hand in Skyward Sword, but this circumstance is very unique and we will discuss it in depth in the other part of this collaboration over on my channel, which can be found here, or in the description.
Why the Triforce is pulled out of the Sacred Realm in those games is never clearly stated. However, the original 2 games show that the royal family was using the Triforce directly. As such, it is likely that they removed it from the Sacred Realm for that reason. Also consider that the Sacred Realm up to A Link to the Past had been in a corrupted state ever since Ganondorf touched the Triforce back in Ocarina of Time. As for the Wind Waker, the Triforce of Wisdom was removed by the royal family and broken up in order to keep it safe. The Triforce of Courage was likely removed by force, immediately after the Hero of Time was sent back to his past. At that point it shattered, perhaps raining down to the lands of Hyrule, to later be discovered by its people. That being said, the struggle in Zelda 1 and 2 as well as the Wind Waker does appear to be about physically possessing the pieces of the relic. When it comes to Wind Waker, we can see that Link and Zelda both have their marks, but only gain them after touching their physical completed pieces. Likewise, in A Link Between Worlds, Link only becomes paired after the sages summon the Triforce of Courage for him to touch. That game also shows us that the access granted by pairing can be transferred or taken, though it seems that Hilda uses Zelda's access to physically summon the Triforce of Wisdom from the Sacred Realm. Yuga, however, is shown to be able to take that access from Hilda without having to call the relic forth. We also know that Link and Zelda are not in physical possession of their Triforce pieces, because at the end of the game, it is shown to be still unified and physically in Hyrule's Sacred Realm.
As we see in A Link Between Worlds, access to a piece of the Triforce may be stolen from an individual through combat or magic, and this concept applies to the entire series. Since the individual's pairing to the Triforce can be taken from them, it can also be willingly given away, as seen in Twilight Princess. Around the middle of the game, Mina gets cursed by Zant and requests that Link take her to Zelda. After conversing a bit about the Mirror of Twilight, Zelda gives her access to the Triforce of Wisdom, causing her to fade into Twilight while saving Mina's life. Later on in the story, it's revealed that through a similar method, Ganondorf was able to channel his power from the Triforce of Power to Zant, while still holding on to its access for himself. We can confirm that Ganondorf is channeling the Triforce of Power because once Ganondorf dies, we can clearly see the mark fade from his hand. We don't see Zelda or Link taking the Triforce from his body at any point, nor is it shown physically leaving him, which further supports our theory that in this case, the Triforce's energy is paired to them without physical possession.
Transferring access does seem to be the goal in Twilight Princess. While Ganondorf's end goal does involve getting the Triforce, his actions in Twilight Princess seem more rooted in revenge and the conquest of Hyrule, rather than rushing into his end game. In other words, probably due to the humiliation of his execution and banishment, he is now taking his time and enjoying the destruction of the kingdom with his Twilight forces. In The Wind Waker, though, Ganondorf may be more desperate as 2 of the Triforce pieces are outside of his grasp. Having broken out of his corrupted Sacred Realm, after dominating the land and being stopped by the Great Flood, he is now at a standstill. His endgame goal has been halted by 2 of the pieces being physically dismantled. In order to win, he needs the heroes to reunite their pieces, though he doesn't seem very interested in trying to steal their access to it. This may be because physically touching it after forcing it to reunite is key to making a wish. Overall, his behavior in The Wind Waker reflects a person who has effectively won, and just wants the game to end. As to where in Twilight Princess, he is still in the throes of conquest, and so very bloodthirsty.
We're aware that the widely accepted interpretation of the Triforce's nature is that the mark of the Triforce simply appears on the hands of its wielder, but our theory we've been presenting contradicts this, so let's go over our points again to help clarify.
During a Triforce split, the relic binds itself to people who holds the virtues associated with it. Being paired with those pieces, the individuals are able to access that power of the Triforce remotely.
In Ocarina of Time, Ganondorf enters the Sacred Realm and attempts to use the full Triforce. However, it splits, leaving him with only the Triforce of Power. The most common interpretation of these events is that when Ganondorf touches it, the Triforce physically splits, leaving him with only the Triforce of Power to use. However, we theorize that the pieces of Wisdom and Courage remained in the Sacred Realm, but Link and Zelda were granted access to their power.
Ganondorf is clearly shown accessing its power despite the relic being in the Sacred Realm. In Ocarina of Time, we can see all three pieces being accessed remotely on their hands during the final confrontation. This is because when a Triforce split happens, the object may not actually move, but merely send access out to those who are worthy of it. Ultimately, this means the struggle during Ocarina of Time is over taking access away from the other parties.
The Triforce would likely still be in the now corrupted Sacred Realm, where Ganondorf would view it as safe. It is possible that the pieces could be inside Link and Zelda and Ganondorf, but it makes more sense that they remain in the Sacred Realm as each of them can now remotely access the power they use.
There is a struggle in some games about the physical possession of the pieces. In A Link Between Worlds, we can see that access is being taken away from paired users, with Link himself only becoming paired after the Triforce of Courage is summoned for him to touch. It is clear that they are not in physical possession of their pieces during this game, as during the ending, the relic is shown to be in the Sacred Realm and unified. In Twilight Princess, Ganondorf has the power needed to win, with Zelda being in his grasp and Link's mark already being in play. In The Wind Waker, due to its story and its broken Triforce pieces, Ganondorf's victory is out of reach. As such, he has to bide his time waiting for the hero and princess to eventually reassemble their pieces, at which point he can take them by force.
The main point here is that not every appearance of the Triforce throughout the series means that the Triforce is physically wielded by the individuals. Sometimes it is, while in other situations its power is being channeled from the Sacred Realm. Finally, access to the Triforce remotely may be taken from the select individuals and also given away to others.
Hey guys, thanks for watching the video. It was a joy to work with Andy on this one, so I'd like to give him a super big thank you.
Thanks for having me, Cornelius. If you enjoyed this video, go check out our other video over on my channel where we combine this concept of Triforce pairing with Hylia's plan to the triumph over Demise.
Yep, that's a really great concept that needs its own deep dive. So I hope to see you all there.